everybody. Welcome to Market Mavericks. Of course, I'm Gareth Soloway, joined by Scott Melker right here. Mike McGlone should be along any minute. He'll be joining us, and we will get into the market action. It's been a little while because of the holidays since we've had Market Mavericks, but we're hoping in the new year to be very consistent, maybe every single Thursday at 3 p.m. Scott, how you doing, buddy? Happy New Year.
Doing good. Happy New Year to you. Although Dave Weisberger told me we're not allowed to say that after January 3rd.
Oh,
I don't know. It's like white pants after Labor Day or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm still saying Happy New Year because I don't live by those rules.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what's been going on here. To be fair, we saw a little bit of an altcoin bounce in the markets, 25%. Most people laugh at that. In the stock market, if we got that, that would be the most incredible thing ever. But in crypto, it's kind of like, wait, did anything actually happen? And Bitcoin hasn't done much either. And I guess the question is do you see anything that's telling us there's going to be a resurgence in crypto?
I can't say that there's going to be a resurgence in crypto in the short term, but if we're taking it from a chart perspective, I do think there are at least some encouraging signs. As you can see here, Bitcoin flipped the 50 MA on the daily back to support. And if you look at the move today, I mean, it's to the,
right there.
To the penny, right? And if we close kind of here or higher, that's a pretty nice reversal candle. Listen, that to me means maybe we go back to 94, 95, or if we get really optimistic, we push 100. Great, right? So I think we still, if you're looking at the weekly, a lot of people are watching the 50 MA on the weekly, which is looming ahead around 100. And every time we've gone into a bear market, we break down the 50 on the weekly, bounce back up and test it, and back down to the 200 MA, which is sitting, 60,000. So I think there's a lot of fear that even the next rally would be something to sell into. But this does look like an ascending triangle to me on Bitcoin. You've got consistently higher lows here, kind of consolidating against a flat top there at about 94.5. And then you kind of mentioned the bounce on altcoins. If you take a look, Ethereum also broke above the 50 MA. Solana also broke above the 50 MA. XRP also broke above the 50 MA. I mean, these things have been trading under these, since September, October, when we were supposed to be getting October, and then the government shut down and things kind of went bad for crypto. So I would say that there's some optimistic signs here, at least that we could see, another 10, 15, 20% upside on a lot of stuff before we really choose a final direction. So I'm not as bearish, I think, as a lot of people are.
Yeah, and I'm trying to kind of think about that as well. And I'm looking at a chart here, which, we see essentially the 2017 high, then the 2021 high, and now 2025. Are you in the camp that the 4-year cycle is still a thing, or are you not really subscribed to that?
I'm not really subscribed to that anymore. I mean, it's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it type things, but it broke in my mind. So I do see the people who look at the 4-year cycle and say, well, if it was a 4-year cycle, we should have topped in October, and we did. Okay, so that's one data point. But when I look at what the rest of the 4-year cycle always meant to me, it was more about the entire market and how the liquidity flowed and where the volume went. And we had a far preemptive all-time high with Bitcoin because of the ETFs, way ahead of schedule if you also were using those data points. We never saw the altcoin rotation that you should have normally seen in a 4-year cycle. And to be quite frank, it's extremely limited upside, right? So even if you think that the top was in, that wasn't a very inspired top, right? So I think that, for better or for worse, it's a little more beholden to other markets, even though, I mean, listen, everything's up and Bitcoin's flat. So to me, it still looks pretty uncorrelated. And if the top is in, I think there's an argument to be made that if we got such limited upside that maybe this 35, 40%, that's your bear market downside, right? Like, why would we go down 80, 85% if we only went up, a 2x entirely or something, from we didn't even get a 2x from the previous all-time high. Right?
But do you think that, I mean, could it be that now that institutions are involved, we're not seeing as much upside because it's getting to be, it's like the law of large numbers, right? It's like, how are we going to see 500% again on Bitcoin in a single cycle?
I mean, I saw Tom Lee, I think, on TV, and God bless him. But I think he said $250,000 Ethereum. That would be like a $30 trillion market cap. Right? You're talking about like more than half the U.S. stock market, a third of global equities around the world. Like when people make these kind of hyperbolic price predictions to the upside, you have to really understand that you'd have to be completely reallocating from other asset classes to have these assets be that huge. It's one thing to be at a couple trillion, which is fine. That's where we are. right? And even for Bitcoin to now get to gold, you're talking about like a 10x, right? So there's a lot of breathing room there. But when you start getting these insane, multi-million-dollar Bitcoin or $10,000 XRP or whatever things you're seeing, you're talking about that asset sucking out the life of every other asset class. And so
Right.
those are pretty easy to dismiss.
And that's always been like one of my pet peeves is like, Tom Lee obviously has made a name for himself, but when you give out these ridiculous price targets, it triggers the emotional response within the investing community. And you get a lot of people that are buying the all-time highs before it corrects, right? It's almost a signal that you're going to get a correction. And like, I guess the question is like, why is there a need for this? I mean, obviously you get headlines and maybe that's the purpose to draw people to see his, Bitmine, right? Or whatever was going on there. But I do think that like, people should, especially when you're in a position of having some ability to convey thoughts to millions of people, have a little bit more control about your predictions so that you don't end up feeding into the frenzy. What are your
By the way,
thoughts?
somebody is literally calling me retarded in the comments saying that Tom Lee said this about Bitcoin and not ETH. Can you bring my screen up?
Yeah, absolutely. Here.
Just so I can unretard myself. By the way, here you go. Ethereum to 250,000. Tom Lee charts target as Bitmine stock price jumps. He said it will go up 8,000% to $250,000 eventually. Just in case you were wondering.
Scott, you know your stuff. I would never argue if you say something happening.
Listen, it's wild. His hair is amazing in that AI generated photo there, I will say. But yeah, I think you have to be, to some degree, there's a level of price target that you can make and show, hey, man, I'm mega hyper bullish. And then there's ridiculous. Right. And you don't want to go full ridiculous,
Yeah, no, and I agree with that 100%. And I think it's important to understand that I don't think anyone here, you or I, don't think that Bitcoin can eventually achieve 250,000. It's just when you pigeonhole yourself, I think he said it first in October to say by year end. I mean, that's really pigeonholing yourself in a quarter to get a double in essentially Bitcoin from a 2 trillion asset to a 4 or 2.5 to 5 trillion.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, McGlone talks about this all the time. How you can, be right, but you'd be stopped out. Right. And so putting a time-based prediction, you're going to end up being right, but you're going to look stupid by the time you are. Right. So I hate those like by the end of the year, because the end of the year is such an arbitrary time frame anyways. Right. I mean, I was actually talking to Ran earlier today, like just kind of privately, which will eventually be published. And he said, listen, if you just move back the Bitcoin chart from October 8th to, October 10th to October 10th, you had a 2x and everyone would say great bull market, but October 10th, the market crashed and that was the top. But now you kind of arbitrarily say January to January and all of a sudden it looks like a crappy cycle. Right. So like it just really, everything has to be tied to a time frame, and
context is everything, right? Yeah. So let's move away. So we have, Bitcoin obviously struggling. And the one thing I do want to mention on Bitcoin that I am just keeping an eye on is that, the one thing we don't want to see is this sort of pattern formation, right? And again, I'm not saying that that's happening yet, but if we form, essentially, this is called a head and shoulders pattern, that would obviously signal further downside. And I am concerned partially that, I do think part of this, and I'd be curious as to your thought on this, is that the silver and metals have gotten so popular, right? You have two groups in crypto, right? You have the people that are hodl like you, that'll just hold on forever. They don't even care what's happening. They're just holding on for the next 10, 20 years. And then you have the people that want to get rich quick, and they take their money from crypto and they're rushing into silver right now, right? And so I do wonder if that's part of the reason we've seen such massive underperformance in Bitcoin, ETH, and maybe the altcoins. Are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. So I allude to my friend Dave Weisberger's comments on this. He calls it the hot ball of money, right? And you get this hot ball of money moving around, and the people who maybe would have been spending that hot ball of money on XRP and Solana are now trading silver and gold. And he really, really, really squarely believes in the thesis that you just presented. I would offer some additional theses to that. I think that is true. I think the other two major factors, obviously, in this cycle are that Bitcoin came in not through spot Bitcoin, but through ETFs, institutional products. It was not retail money. It was institutional money. And there's effectively no way for that money to trickle down into the rest of the crypto market. So Bitcoin can really do much better in a vacuum now, and the rest of the crypto market can be left behind. You buy IBIT and you get bored, you can't just go flip into coin number 74 on coin market cap from your IBIT, right? Because you have these select products that you can move that money around in within your actual stock portfolio, right? So that would be number two. Number three, in my mind, if you're wondering why crypto itself hasn't moved outside of Bitcoin, I really believe that the emergence of predictive markets has been extremely damaging in a way that people have not discussed to crypto, because if you're intellectually honest about what has moved altcoins in the past, it's speculation.
Speculation.
Right?
Yeah.
Even if you believe that we're in a period now where utility and fundamentals are going to reprice these crypto assets and only the ones that actually have, understandable utility are going to move. Well, that wasn't the case in the past, right? Like, things went up because of narratives, and things went up because people thought they would go up more and that they could sell it to somebody else as it was going up, right? The same reason. So it was all speculation. Now you can bet on the weather tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And so the people who didn't have access to casinos, who were bored, who had a little extra stimulus capital, they speculated on meme coins and even on more fundamentally sound altcoins to some degree. And now I really think that money, that hot ball of money, whether it's in silver or gold or elsewhere, now can go gamble somewhere else. So I think that
you're
there's
right.
a lot of really good reasons right now that we're just not seeing much interest in the altcoin market. And to be honest, if you even take the bullish case, and I keep saying this, if the bullish case is that some altcoins emerge because they're valued fundamentally and based on actual usage and utility, I would argue that means they need to be repriced down massively before that happens, because the current price was based on the speculation and not the utility. So it's just a really, really tough market. And then if you take a look at it cyclically, usually when Bitcoin's sideways, that's when altcoins do well. They haven't. So if Bitcoin goes up, it'll outperform altcoins. If Bitcoin's going sideways, doesn't look good for altcoins. And if Bitcoin goes now, we know that altcoins will underperform. So right now, it's just not a great environment for them. You just brought up my silver chart, though. I think it looks cooked. I think silver.
I mean, that's a whole new thing. But I agree with you. I think the speculation has gotten much further. And again, part of me is looking at this from pre-COVID to post-COVID, right? Pre-COVID, there was always this thing on CNBC. I'd always hear, oh, well, the retail investor's not in the market. They haven't come back since the 08, 09 collapse, right? And the financial crisis, because they got so burned. But once we got to COVID, there was this kind of mentality of like, well, I'm sitting home. The government's sending me a check. What am I going to do with that? I'm already saving money because I'm not working or driving or this or that, and I'm still getting paid. Where do I do? All right, well, let me go open a stock trading account, a crypto account, all of these things. And it creates that gambler's mentality again, especially because, let's be fair. I mean, if the economy struggles, the Fed lowers rates. If the economy struggles, the government does this, right? There's this almost like this natural put to the market that's kept it always rebounding a V bottom. I mean, we've seen V bottoms every which way on every stock market drop. Including earlier this year with the liberation tariff sell-off. I mean, it was just vertical right back up. And I think that creates this mentality amongst investors where, if you came in after 2020, you've never really gone through a multi-year real bear market. I mean, now listen, crypto's different, but at least from the stock market perspective, people just aren't used to it.
Yeah, I mean, and it can be a decade in the stock market. At least crypto, we get a 3-year bear market before things go back up. You can look at, I mean, how long did it take the Nikkei to reach an all-time high again after the 90s? 30 years? I don't really know.
Like 30, 40 years.
So, when it really goes bad in the stock market, it really, really goes bad, and you struggle to come back. So I think it's a point well taken. The question is, if we get stimulus this time, if we get helicopter money in advance of the election, try to buy some votes, where will that money flow this time? Last time, it made a hell of a lot of sense that it flowed into GameStop and NFTs and meme coins and crypto in general. I think a lot of people would go YOLO bet on predictive markets. I think they would go to Polymarket and bet on the election results, or things that we started to see more popular last time. I'm not saying that a lot of liquidity won't come into crypto. Listen, all it takes is if Bitcoin puts in a $10,000 daily candle to the upside, we're having a completely different conversation and still roughly in the same area of price, right? So all it takes for crypto to see some volume, hopefully, or liquidity is, higher prices. It's the best marketing, but we got to get there.
Speaking of the predictive markets, and again, just a couple things that just drive me nuts is that, so number one, just before the U.S. went into Venezuela, I'm sure you heard about the predictive market. 30,000 new account was open, 30,000 was placed on Maduro or the U.S. going in there. They won 400,000, and again, brand new account created, 30,000 on it, and like immediately this happens. And then the other thing to just point out here is, and this drove me nuts, is yesterday afternoon, we saw Trump posting on social media that the defense stocks, they weren't, building stuff fast enough. It was costing too much. They need to stop paying dividends. They need to stop paying their CEOs more than $5 million. And these stocks literally got trounced in the afternoon yesterday. All right. So what ends up happening here, and here it is right here on Lockheed Martin, right? This drop. And then literally as soon as the markets closed, he posts a new social media message saying, hey, we need to spend an extra 50%, 1.5 trillion on defense. And these stocks just surge right back up. And again, listen, whether you can believe what you want, it just looks bad. Frankly, it just looks bad. This happened with the Trump coin too. I mean, I still remember when the Trump coin came out, is that you had accounts that, basically bought initially and then were dumping. I mean, you probably remember this stuff better than me, but it just it feels like it's so much risk. It's so rigged. And listen, I'm not saying Democrats are Republicans. Like, listen, Pelosi's another story. That's horrible too. There's definitely inside information there. But does it seem to you that it's just gotten more and more blatant? Like, it's just so out in your face now.
It's so blatant. It's so out in your face, and it's so unpredictable, right? So, I think that I wish Mike was here, because, he always says, well, this would be the first time in history. Maybe this time is different. And, there's no four more dangerous words in investing than this time is different. But maybe this time is different because it's so blatant and insane and in your face, as you said. And the rules have just utterly changed. Like I keep saying, I'm never endingly impressed by the amount of buttons and levers that they can push and pull, and the ways that they can prop up the market, the recession that we never had. And there's no real time in history that you can point back and see consistency with everything up like this. I mean, just gold's up, silver's up, stocks are up. Like how, these are, a lot of these things are supposed to be inversely correlated. You're supposed to see one go up when the other goes down. And it's almost like all bets are off now,
No, I was going to say, and what I worry about is what keeps me up at night is not a recession. It's that, at some point we all know this music stops, and it's much worse than a recession, right? You look at what drove the financial crisis and this, crazy amounts of ridiculous lending to people that shouldn't have necessarily got loans for homes. And then the spiral into the financial system and all the levers that were triggered that caused these Lehman Brothers collapses. But think about how levered we are now as the world or the US. And it's just like, I mean, at some point, things are going to get really bad. And this may be I've talked about this before, but like the idea that maybe the whole financial system just needs a flush out, like a full reset. And obviously the pain will come, like the pain involved, like we might say, oh, this would be great, but the amount of pain we'd all go through would be horrendous. But maybe that's what it takes to bring us back to like a financial system that works for everyone.
Yeah, I think that only works if you actually allow the free market to, expunge things in real time and you don't prop it up. So it's not a free market when they're pushing the buttons and pulling the levers. So it's, the book Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb, people always point to, but he talks about the idea that you want to clear out all the brush and burn the brush and the bushes and everything in the forest because eventually there's going to be a big fire, and that's going to supercharge the big fire. And if you don't allow the brush fires to happen and you put them out, then eventually the fire that happens destroys the entire forest, right? And that's kind of, I think, he was talking about that as an allusion to markets at that case. I think it makes a lot of sense here. There will be a time when there's not a button left to push and the bottom drops out. And when that happens, you end up with a depression instead of a recession, because the free market was never allowed to kill the zombie companies or to have the corrections that it should have had, or to stay down for a little while instead of V-shaped recovery every single time. So the problem is, good luck timing that.
Right.
Is that this year? Is that this month? Is that in 10 years? I have no idea. Right. So like, I think you just kind of stay
kind of ride the roller coaster
until, and then even when they say they want markets up, I know that they're going to want markets up for the midterm. So
yeah. And you're right about that. I mean, we're now, this is 2026. Midterms are in November, right? I mean, you have, and that's, I think this is one of the things that surprised me, is that I think all of us here on Market Mavericks assumed we would get a correction late in 2025 so that it could set up the roar back and the power of the markets going into the midterms, right? And potentially help the Republicans maintain majorities.
But we haven't seen 5 months. I still think they have 5 months where they could allow the market to at least correct, and then it would be forgotten by midterms, right? So like if the market corrects through May or June, I'm not saying this will happen,
Mhm.
but if they go into summer and it's midterms time and we start to see the markets climb, even if they were down 20%, people would think it was a bull market,
That's
right?
true.
The last thing that can happen though is that markets collapse in September for
Right.
them, for midterms. Then they lose, and on our side, we get the anti-crypto army back. Elizabeth Warren is the head of the Senate Financial Committee, and we're back to square one. So I hope that some of those things don't happen. But
Do
I
you
mean, if
think
you're taking an odds-on bet, you can bet that they're going to run this as hot as humanly possible through the rest of this year to try to make sure that there's never a time when the markets are down.
Do you think that's a potential risk for crypto by the second half of 2026? That if things aren't looking good, that could be a reason why, let's say, Bitcoin is under pressure because you might have the Democrats taking over, maybe more anti-crypto in government, or no?
I think it would be a problem for the industry. I don't think it would be a problem for Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has flown the coop. Like it's a completely legitimized asset. I mean, it's, on the ticker on Fox and CNBC every single day. When you have Larry Fink talking about it on a roadshow and sounding like Satoshi Nakamoto himself,
Yeah.
I think that Bitcoin will be fine. I don't think it'll be largely affected, but the rest of the crypto market and the industry could certainly suffer. A lot of eyes are on the Clarity Act. The markup is supposed to happen basically by January 15th. I mean, a lot of people conjecturing we could see a vote this month. Like if that doesn't pass and then we go into midterms and then all of a sudden, the House or one of them flips and there's no appetite for crypto legislation, we're kind of left hanging still and with an air of uncertainty that we had in the previous administration.
Interesting. So now, as we head into, now we're in January of 2026. There's obviously we're going to watch the jobs report tomorrow. Jobs report will be out. Yesterday, we got the ADP private sector, which I will note has been the much more accurate depiction of the jobs market by far than the actual government data.
Well, we didn't even get government data for a few months there.
Right. But yeah, but essentially it's showing us that, I think we added 41,000 jobs, which is, in general, you need to add more jobs usually to keep pace with immigration, but we really don't have much immigration right now, obviously, with the crackdown. But I guess the point is that the economy is essentially stagnant except for AI. And I'll just mention this. I think there was I don't remember which Federal Reserve Bank came out today, but they basically upped the GDP number. And the first thing I said to my fellow traders is I'd love to see the breakdown of what is AI related and what's the rest of the economy. And like the rest of the economy, you almost know it's like zero growth, but it's AI. And I think again, it drives me nuts because I look at stocks in AI. Obviously, we've had so much hype. Robotics are coming, supercomputers, and people are seeing this as a great thing. And then I also think like, okay, think 3 steps ahead. Well, how many jobs are going bye-bye? Now, granted, that's going to make things much more efficient. Maybe that can control inflation. But at the same time, how do we deal with like the unemployment that is probably going to come in the next 10 years because of that?
Yeah, I feel like right now there's just no jobs. I mean, these numbers are rounding errors. Even when you get 40,000, if you believe it, I mean, these, like you said, if you break that down, I mean, we used to do this during the Biden years and you would see that it was all government jobs. There's a lot of nuance, obviously, to the job numbers, but anecdotally, just go out there and people don't seem particularly excited about the job market at the moment on the streets, right? And I haven't done the work. I mean, I've listened to a lot of opinions on what AI will mean for jobs into the future. I mean, certainly it's going to replace a hell of a lot of jobs, but it's hard for me to handicap how many new jobs it will create with new industries that are yet to even be imagined. We've certainly had the same arguments over the years about any new technology, how it was going to destroy the job market, and they never did. Right, because they created new industries that nobody had even imagined that were huge. I mean, I remember kind of reading books about the early days of the music industry, and when the record was, invented, and all of a sudden you didn't need to call a band in to the studio to play on the radio, and you could just play a record. It's over for bands, and what it actually did was allowed those bands to go tour the world because everybody heard their music, and the music industry actually exploded with the, invention.
How old are you again?
So it's like it's kind of the same thing you always hear about new technology is this fear, whatever. I think it should probably lead to more productivity, but it's going to be a strange and interesting time. Certainly, I really view AI as kind of I think it'll be the biggest technological shift that we certainly ever see in our lifetimes. We're kind of
Yeah,
living
no,
through
I
that right
agree. It is, and again, you and I both went through the internet age, right? I mean, you know, I had until I was in high school, I didn't even have a computer or know what the internet was. I still remember teaching myself how to type on a keyboard when I was in high school. So I mean, it has changed lives, and AI has already changed. I use AI almost every day now. I mean, I'm sure you do too.
My first day at Penn, they asked me what I wanted my email address to be, and I literally was like, "What's an email address?" It was 1995. I'd utilize Linux in the school library to dial up on a 14.4, but I had no idea that this was even a thing. So it's just a totally different world. But I think that AI will probably lead to a renaissance of productivity. Personally,
Last thing, we're running out of time, but the last thing I wanted to touch on here is more geopolitical. And we saw obviously Maduro being captured by the U.S., the U.S. going in there. And the first thing I thought about is, does this give China a green light with Taiwan to say, well, you guys did this. Can they now say, okay, we can go in and get Taiwan, or is there even going to be any blowback? And I was curious about your thoughts on that. And also, does it have bigger implications for what's going to happen to other areas of the world, right? Greenland is now back on the talking point, all that
we're
stuff.
taking that. That's ours. Wait till where do they hear about us in Mexico? Listen, it's scary. Like I'm not like all the kind of signals are there of a bit of light imperialism here coming from the United States. Like I should say very clearly, I'm an unaffiliated voter. When I talk about Venezuela, people tell me I have TDS, and I remind them of my tweets about Biden for 4 years because then I had extreme TDS times 5. Right? I just don't trust the government, which is why I Bitcoin in general.
I'm right there with you.
But you can at the same time believe that Maduro should not be president or dictator or leader of the company and a country, and at the same time not believe necessarily that it was the United States' job or be skeptical of the United States' intentions of doing it. And that's never generally ended well for the people of any country except for maybe Panama that the United States has ever gotten involved in. So I just, I love it for the Venezuelan people now. I'm fearful for them, for the future. But I do think it certainly opens the door. I don't know that China will go into Taiwan because they probably still fear blowback from the United States or whatever would happen. But I think the United States is going to go into more places.
Yeah, it certainly does seem like that. It makes a lot of sense. And you're right, Maduro's he was a bad dude. There's no doubt about it. It's the bigger issue of, is it the US job essentially? And this is what's been gone back and forth, right? Under Democrats, we went into these countries and then people hated it. Under Republicans now doing the same thing. It's
not a political statement. It's US foreign policy for 50, 60 years. I mean, you got, all across the world. CIA goes in, regime change, the World Bank and IMF give a predatory loan to the country. They can't pay it back. The United States private companies come in, and we already know Exxon's going to get the oil industry in Venezuela. It's a playbook as old as time. So it's definitely not about Trump in any way, shape, or form. But it's a really strange time we're living in.
It is amazing. And everything's on social media for full display. There's nothing really held back. So, all right. On that note, guys, we are going to exit. We missed Mike McGlone today, but he will be back, I'm sure, next time. And, other than that, Scott, thank you so much. Great discussion, man. Just great insights, great information. And as always, folks, we'll be hoping to be back next Thursday for another episode of Market Mavericks. You guys have a great one. Thanks again. Make sure to follow Scott below at his handle on X, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Gareth.